The afternoon sun streamed through the curtains as Kate Wilson unpacked the last of her boxes. It had been 3 months since her mother married Robert Taylor, and the adjustment to their new blended family was still a work in progress. At 22, Kate hadn't planned on living at home after college, but the rising cost of apartments in the city made staying home the only practical option. She placed the framed photo of her graduation on the nightstand and sat on the edge of her bed. The house was nice, bigger than their old apartment, but it still felt strange. Even stranger was having a new stepbrother under the same roof. Jack was only a year older than her, also stuck living at home while finishing his master's degree. From down the hall, she heard the familiar sound of Jack's guitar. He played well, she had to admit. Over the past months, they had kept a polite distance, exchanging pleasantries at dinner but otherwise leading separate lives. Their parents seemed disappointed they hadn't become instant friends, but Kate felt awkward around him. It didn't help that Jack was attractive, tall with kind eyes and an easy smile that made her feel things she shouldn't feel for a stepbrother. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. The door opened and her mother appeared, looking tired but happy. "All settled in." "Almost," Kate replied. "Just a few more things to arrange." "Listen, honey," her mother said, sitting beside her. "I know this hasn't been easy. New house, new family, but Robert and I really appreciate how well you've handled everything." Kate nodded, feeling a twinge of guilt. The truth was, she wasn't handling it that well. She felt displaced, caught between being an adult and still being her mother's daughter. "I was thinking," her mother continued, "maybe you could try to spend some time with Jack. Robert mentioned he's been feeling a bit isolated too." Kate suppressed a sigh. "Mom, we're adults. We don't need to be best friends just because you and Robert got married." "I know, but you might find you have more in common than you think." After her mother left, Kate stared at the ceiling, contemplating how to navigate this new life. A text message alert broke her concentration. It was from her friend Mia, canceling their weekend plans. Great, now she was stuck at home with nothing to do. Later that evening, Kate headed to the kitchen for a late-night snack. To her surprise, Jack was there, making a sandwich. "Sorry," she said, ready to retreat. "I didn't know anyone was still up." Jack looked up, seeming equally surprised. "No worries. Hungry?" She nodded, and he gestured to the bread and cold cuts on the counter. "Help yourself. I made too much anyway." An awkward silence fell as Kate prepared her food. She searched for something to say, anything to break the tension. "How's your music going?" she finally asked, remembering the guitar she'd heard earlier. Jack's face brightened. "It's good, actually. I'm playing at the campus coffee shop next weekend." He hesitated, then added, "You should come if you want." "Maybe I will," she replied, surprised by his invitation. They ended up talking for nearly 2 hours, discovering shared interests in music, films, and books they both loved. Jack wasn't at all what she had expected. He was thoughtful and funny, listening intently when she spoke about her job search and offering genuine advice. As the night grew late, Kate realized she was enjoying his company more than she had expected to. There was an ease to their conversation that hadn't been there before, a connection forming that both excited and unnerved her. "I should probably get some sleep," Jack finally said, glancing at the clock. Kate nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting at the kitchen island. "Yeah, me too. But this was nice." "It was," he agreed, his smile making her heart beat a little faster. "We should do it again sometime." Walking back to her room, Kate felt confused by the warm feeling spreading through her chest. She had expected to endure living with a stepbrother, not to enjoy his company, and she certainly hadn't expected the flutter in her stomach when he smiled at her. As she crawled into bed, Kate told herself it was just the relief of finally feeling comfortable in her new home. Nothing more. But as sleep claimed her, Jack's smile lingered in her mind, promising complications she wasn't ready to face. Over the next few weeks, Kate found herself seeking out Jack's company more often. Their late-night kitchen talks became a regular thing, sometimes lasting until the early hours of the morning. They were careful to keep their voices low, not wanting to wake their parents. These quiet conversations felt like their own private world. One evening, Kate came home from a particularly frustrating job interview. She had been so sure this position would work out, but the moment she walked into the office, she knew it wasn't right. The interviewer's condescending tone had only confirmed her feelings. She tossed her purse onto her bed and changed into comfortable clothes. As she headed to the kitchen for some comfort food, she heard Jack talking on the phone in the living room. She tried to walk by without disturbing him, but he waved her over. "I have to go," he said to whoever was on the other end. "We'll talk later." He hung up and turned to Kate. "Bad day. Is it that obvious?" she asked, dropping onto the couch beside him. "You have your the world is against me face on," he said with a small smile. "Want to talk about it?" Kate surprised herself by telling him everything about the interview. Jack listened attentively, nodding at the right moments and frowning when she described the interviewer's attitude. "That guy sounds like a jerk," he said when she finished. "But maybe it's for the best. You wouldn't want to work somewhere that doesn't appreciate you." "I know, but I'm running out of options," Kate sighed. "At this rate, I'll be living here forever. Would that be so bad?" Jack asked, his voice softer. "I mean, I know it's not ideal, but—" He trailed off, looking away. Kate felt a warmth spread through her chest. "No, I guess not," she replied. "Some parts are actually pretty good." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Kate became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, their shoulders almost touching. Jack seemed to realize it too, because he suddenly stood up. "I almost forgot," he said, crossing to his guitar case in the corner. "I've been working on a new song. Would you mind listening and telling me what you think?" Kate nodded, grateful for the distraction from the strange tension between them. Jack settled back on the couch, though with more distance between them this time, and began to play. His fingers moved skillfully over the strings, and when he started singing, Kate was surprised by the emotion in his voice. The song was about new beginnings and unexpected feelings, the lyrics vague enough to be about anything, but something in the way he occasionally glanced at her made Kate wonder if there was more to it. When he finished, the room fell silent except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. "That was beautiful," Kate said finally. "Did you write it?" Jack nodded, suddenly looking shy. "I've been working on it for a few weeks. It's still rough." "It didn't sound rough to me," she said. "You're really talented, Jack. Your coffee shop audience is going to love it." "About that," he said, setting the guitar aside. "The performance is this Friday. I know we mentioned it a while back, but I wasn't sure if you remembered or still wanted to come." "Of course I do," Kate replied, surprised by how much she meant it. "I wouldn't miss it." The smile that spread across his face made her heart beat faster. "Great. It starts at 8, but I can save you a seat if you want to come a bit later." "I'll be there at 7:30, she promised, front row. They stayed up talking about music and his other original songs. Jack even taught her a few simple chords on the guitar, his hands occasionally covering hers to guide her fingers to the right positions. Each touch sent a small jolt through her, which she tried desperately to ignore. When Kate finally went to bed that night, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Jack had looked at her while singing or how his hands had felt over hers. This growing closeness was dangerous. They were step-siblings living under the same roof. Their parents would be thrilled they were getting along, but they wouldn't understand the confusing feelings developing between them. As she drifted off to sleep, Kate told herself she would be more careful, keep more distance, but she knew, even as she made this promise to herself, that she would be sitting front row at his performance on Friday, drawn to him in ways she couldn't, or didn't want to resist. Friday evening arrived faster than Kate expected. She stood in front of her mirror, trying on her fourth outfit of the night. Nothing seemed right. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, but she also wanted to look nice for Jack's performance. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself, finally settling on a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. She applied a light touch of makeup and let her hair fall loose around her shoulders. As she was putting on her earrings, her mother knocked on the door. "You look beautiful," she said, smiling at Kate through the mirror. "Hot date?" Kate felt her cheeks flush. "No, just going to a coffee shop to hear some music." Her mother raised an eyebrow. "Alone?" "Actually, Jack is performing there tonight," Kate admitted. "I promised I'd go support him." A look of pleasant surprise crossed her mother's face. "That's wonderful. Robert and I were just saying how happy we are that you two are getting along so well. It means a lot to both of us." The genuine joy in her mother's voice made Kate feel guilty. If her mother knew the real reason she was dressing up, she wouldn't be smiling like that. "Don't wait up for me," Kate said, grabbing her purse. It might run late. The coffee shop was small and cozy, filled with the rich scent of espresso and the low hum of conversation. Kate arrived at 7:25, scanning the room for Jack. She spotted him in the corner, setting up his guitar and talking to another musician. He looked up, as if sensing her presence, and his face brightened when he saw her. He excused himself and walked over to greet her. "You came," he said, sounding almost surprised. "I said I would," she replied. "I wouldn't miss it. You look." He paused, his eyes taking her in. "Really nice." "Thanks," she said, feeling suddenly shy. "So do you." He had dressed up a bit too, wearing a button-down shirt instead of his usual t-shirts. His hair was neatly styled, and Kate had to resist the urge to reach up and touch it. "I saved you a seat right there," he said, pointing to a small table near the makeshift stage. "Best view in the house." "Good luck," Kate said, "though you won't need it." Jack's performance was even better than she expected. He played several original songs, including the one he had shown her earlier that week. When he performed that one, his eyes found hers in the crowd, and it felt like he was singing directly to her. The other coffee shop patrons disappeared, and for those few minutes, it was just the two of them in the room. After the show, several people approached Jack to compliment his music. Kate waited patiently, watching how naturally he accepted their praise. When the crowd finally thinned, he made his way back to her table. "So what did you think?" he asked, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "You were amazing," she said honestly. "Everyone loved you." "I don't care about everyone," he said quietly. "I care what you thought." Their eyes locked, and Kate felt her heart beat faster. "I thought you were incredible," she whispered. They stayed until closing time, talking and laughing over coffee. The walk home was peaceful, the night air cool against their skin. Their hands brushed occasionally as they walked side by side, each touch sending electric currents through Kate's body. When they reached the house, they found it dark and quiet. Their parents had already gone to bed. They moved silently through the living room, careful not to make noise. At the top of the stairs, they paused outside their respective bedroom doors, facing each other in the dim hallway light. "Thank you for coming tonight," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It meant a lot." "I had a great time," Kate replied, equally quiet. Neither seemed willing to say goodnight. They stood there, inches apart, the tension between them almost palpable. Jack took a small step forward, his eyes dropping to her lips. Kate held her breath, knowing she should step back but finding herself unable to move. Just as Jack leaned in closer, a door opened down the hall. They jumped apart as Robert emerged from the master bedroom, squinting at them in the darkness. "You kids just getting home?" he asked sleepily. "Yeah, Dad," Jack replied, his voice unnaturally high. The coffee shop was packed. "Great crowd." "Glad to hear it," Robert said, heading toward the bathroom. "Your mother and I will want to hear all about it tomorrow." When Robert closed the bathroom door, Kate and Jack exchanged a look, relief mixed with disappointment. "Good night," Kate whispered, slipping into her room before she could change her mind. She leaned against her closed door, heart racing. What had almost happened? And what would she have done if Robert hadn't interrupted them? The next morning, Kate woke early, her mind still replaying the almost kiss from the night before. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to sort through her confused feelings. What was she doing? Jack was her stepbrother. Even if they weren't related by blood, their parents were married. It was wrong, wasn't it? She heard movement in the kitchen and knew she couldn't hide in her room all day. Taking a deep breath, she got up, dressed quickly, and headed downstairs. Jack was alone at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee and looking as tired as she felt. Their eyes met, and Kate saw her own confusion reflected in his face. "Morning," he said cautiously. "Morning," she replied, heading straight for the coffee maker. She needed caffeine before having this conversation. Once her cup was full, she reluctantly joined him at the table. The silence stretched between them, neither knowing quite what to say. About last night, they both started at the same time, then laughed nervously. "You go first," Kate said. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of his nervousness. "I wanted to apologize if I made you uncomfortable. I shouldn't have, well, you know." "You didn't," Kate said quickly, then bit her lip. "Make me uncomfortable, I mean." Jack looked up, surprise and something else flickering in his eyes. No, she admitted. but that doesn't mean it's a good idea. He nodded slowly. I know. This is complicated. Very complicated, she agreed. Our parents would freak out. They'd probably make one of us move out, Jack said. The thought sent a pang through Kate's chest. As confusing as this situation was, the idea of not seeing Jack every day was surprisingly painful. So what do we do? She asked. Before Jack could answer, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Their parents entered the kitchen, looking cheerful and well-rested. Good morning, you two. Kate's mother said brightly. How was the performance last night? Kate and Jack exchanged a quick glance before launching into sanitized descriptions of the coffee shop and Jack's music. They carefully avoided mentioning their walk home or what almost happened afterward. We should all go to your next performance, Robert suggested, clapping Jack on the shoulder. Make it a family outing. That would be great, Jack said, though Kate could tell from his strained smile that he didn't mean it. After breakfast, their parents announced they were going shopping and would be gone most of the day. As soon as the front door closed behind them, the tense atmosphere returned. We need to talk, Jack said, following Kate into the living room. Really talk about this. Kate sat on the couch, tucking her feet beneath her. I'm listening. Jack paced for a moment before sitting beside her, close but not touching. I like you, Kate, more than I should, given our situation. I've tried to ignore it, but it's getting harder. His honesty took her breath away. I like you too, she admitted, but it feels wrong, doesn't it? Does it though? Jack asked. We're not related. We met as adults. If our parents hadn't gotten married, no one would think twice about us being together. But they did get married, Kate reminded him. We live in the same house. We're family now, at least on paper. Jack reached for her hand and Kate didn't pull away. His touch sent warmth spreading up her arm. What if we take things slow? Figure this out together? Kate looked at their joined hands. And what about our parents? We don't have to tell them yet, Jack said. Not until we're sure of what this is between us. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of secret moments and stolen kisses. Kate and Jack were careful to maintain their normal behavior around their parents, friendly but not too close. But when they were alone, everything changed. A simple touch while passing in the hallway, a meaningful glance across the dinner table, whispered conversations late at night when everyone else was asleep. Kate had never felt this way before, excited, terrified, and completely alive. Every moment with Jack felt electric, heightened by the forbidden nature of their relationship. They both knew they were taking a risk, but neither seemed able to stop. One evening, their parents announced they were going to an overnight wedding reception for one of Robert's colleagues. They would be staying at a hotel and returning the following afternoon. You two will be okay on your own, right? Kate's mother asked as she packed an overnight bag. Mom, we're in our 20s, Kate reminded her. I think we can manage one night without supervision. I know, her mother said with a laugh. Just making sure you'll be all right. Jack caught Kate's eye from across the room and gave her a small smile that sent butterflies through her stomach. They would have the house to themselves all night. The thought was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. After their parents left, an awkward tension filled the house. They had been alone together many times before, but this felt different. More intentional. More dangerous. Want to watch a movie? Jack suggested, breaking the silence. Kate nodded, grateful for the distraction. They settled on the couch, leaving a respectable distance between them at first. But as the movie progressed, they gradually moved closer until Kate was tucked against Jack's side, his arm around her shoulders. Are you actually watching this? Jack asked after a while, his fingers absently stroking her arm. Not really, Kate admitted. You haven't followed the plot for the last 20 minutes, he confessed with a smile. Kate looked up at him, taking in his familiar features that somehow never grew less fascinating to her. This is crazy, isn't it? What we're doing. Jack's expression grew serious. Does it feel crazy to you? Sometimes, she said honestly. But then other times it feels like the most natural thing in the world. His free hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face. That's how I feel too. Like we were meant to find each other, even if it happened in the most complicated way possible. Kate leaned into his touch. I'm scared, Jack. What if our parents find out? What if this ruins everything? We'll figure it out, he promised, though his voice held a hint of uncertainty. Together, he leaned down to kiss her, and Kate melted into him, pushing her worries aside. His lips were gentle at first, then more insistent as she responded. Her hands slid up his chest to his shoulders, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath his shirt. The movie played forgotten in the background as their kiss deepened. Jack pulled her closer, his hand tangling in her hair. Kate felt dizzy with desire, lost in the sensation of his mouth on hers, his body pressed against her own. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing heavily. Jack rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "We should slow down," he whispered, though his arms tightened around her. "Should we?" Kate asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Jack opened his eyes, searching her face. "Kate, are you sure? I don't want you to regret anything." In answer, she kissed him again, trying to convey all her confused, powerful feelings through the press of her lips against his. Jack responded immediately, pulling her closer until she was practically in his lap. The distant sound of a car door slamming made them freeze. They pulled apart, listening intently. Footsteps approached the front door, and they heard the jingle of keys. "They're back early," Kate whispered, panic rising in her chest. She quickly moved to the other end of the couch as Jack straightened his rumpled shirt. The door opened, and Kate's mother walked in, looking tired. "The reception was cancelled," she explained. "The bride came down with food poisoning, poor thing. We decided to just come home rather than waste the hotel room." She looked between them, taking in their flushed faces and the paused movie. "Are you two okay? You look strange." "We're fine," Jack said quickly. "Just watching a scary movie. You startled us." "Yeah," Kate added. "We weren't expecting you back until tomorrow." Her mother seemed to accept this explanation. "Well, don't let us interrupt your movie night. We're going straight to bed. It's been a long day." After her mother disappeared upstairs, Kate and Jack exchanged a look of relief mixed with disappointment. Another close call. Another reminder of the precarious nature of their situation. The close call with their parents left Kate and Jack on edge for days. They were more careful, keeping their distance when others were around and stealing only brief moments together. But the tension between them continued to grow, making it harder to maintain their act. One morning, Kate received a job offer from a company across town. It wasn't her dream position, but it paid well and offered room for advancement. She sat on her bed, staring at the email, conflicted feelings swirling through her. Taking this job would give her financial independence. She could finally move out. Part of her knew that might be the wisest choice, given her complicated situation with Jack. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She closed her laptop as Jack peeked in. "Hey, can I come in?" he asked. Kate nodded, making space for him on the bed. He sat beside her, noticing her distracted expression. "Everything okay?" he asked. "I got a job offer," she said, trying to sound excited. Jack's face lit up. "Kate, that's fantastic. Which company?" "Turner Marketing. It's not exactly what I wanted, but it's a start." Jack took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You should be celebrating. Why do you look so unsure?" Kate sighed, turning to face him. "If I take this job, I can afford my own place. I could move out." The smile faded from Jack's face as he understood the implication. "Oh," he said quietly, "and you're thinking that might be better, for us?" "I don't know what to think anymore," Kate admitted. "When we started this, I didn't expect to feel so much. It's getting harder to hide, Jack, and I'm scared of what happens if we're discovered." Jack was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Do you want to end this?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The pain in his eyes made Kate's chest tighten. "No," she said truthfully. "That's the problem. I should want to end it. It would be simpler, safer. But when I think about not being with you..." Jack pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "I feel the same way," he murmured. "I know it's complicated, but these past weeks with you have been the happiest I can remember." They stayed like that for several heartbeats, close but not crossing the line they'd been so careful about lately. Then Jack pulled back slightly, his expression serious. "Take the job," he said. "You deserve it. But don't move out because you're afraid of us. We can figure this out together." "How?" Kate asked. "Our parents will never understand." "Maybe not at first," Jack acknowledged. "But they care about our happiness. If they see how serious we are about each other, maybe they'll come around." "Are we?" Kate asked. "Serious about each other?" Jack's expression softened. "I am. I've never felt this way about anyone, Kate. I know the timing is terrible and the circumstances are a mess, but my feelings for you are real." Kate felt tears spring to her eyes at his words. "Mine too," she whispered. This time when they kissed, it was different, deeper, more certain. Kate wound her arms around his neck, drawing him closer. Jack responded eagerly, his hands sliding down to her waist. They fell back onto the bed together, their kisses growing more urgent. Kate felt herself getting lost in the sensation of his body against hers, his hands moving under the hem of her shirt to touch the bare skin of her back. "We should stop," Jack murmured against her neck, though he made no move to pull away. "I don't want to stop," Kate replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "I'm tired of stopping." Jack pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with desire. Kate nodded, pulling him back down to her. "I want this. I want you." Time seemed to slow as they explored each other with increasing passion. Clothes were discarded, hands and lips discovering new territories. Kate had never felt so vulnerable yet so safe, so desired yet so treasured. Afterward they lay tangled together, Jack's heartbeat steady under her cheek. For the first time in weeks, Kate felt completely at peace. Whatever challenges they faced, she knew that what they shared was worth fighting for. "I love you," Jack whispered into her hair, so softly she almost missed it. Kate lifted her head to look at him, seeing the uncertainty in his eyes, fear that he had said too much, too soon. She smiled, touching his face gently. "I love you too," she replied. The sound of the front door opening downstairs shattered their moment of peace. Their parents were home early again. Jack and Kate exchanged a panicked look before scrambling to find their clothes. "We'll talk more later," Jack promised as he slipped out of her room, checking the hallway to make sure it was clear. Kate quickly straightened her bed and tried to look casual, her mind racing. They couldn't keep sneaking around like this. Something had to change. Kate couldn't sleep that night. Her mind kept replaying everything that had happened with Jack, along with the growing certainty that they needed to tell their parents the truth. Keeping their relationship secret was becoming too difficult, too stressful, and after saying "I love you," hiding felt wrong. She got up early the next morning and found Jack already in the kitchen, making coffee. He smiled when he saw her, but there was tension in his shoulders. "I've been thinking," Kate said, accepting the cup he offered her. "We need to tell them." Jack nodded slowly. "I was thinking the same thing. But how? And when?" "Today," Kate decided. "Before I lose my nerve. They're both home, and we can sit them down together." Jack took a deep breath. "Okay, today it is." They spent the morning planning what to say, practicing how to explain their feelings in a way their parents might understand. By lunchtime, Kate felt physically ill with nervousness, but her resolve hadn't wavered. When their parents finally emerged from their home office where they'd been sorting through bills, Kate and Jack exchanged a look. It was time. "Mom, Robert," Kate began, "could we talk to you both for a few minutes? It's important." Her mother's expression immediately turned worried. "Is everything all right?" "Let's sit down," Jack suggested, gesturing toward the living room. Once they were all seated, an awkward silence fell. Kate's heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Jack reached over and took her hand, a move that didn't go unnoticed by their parents. "We have something to tell you," Jack said, his voice steadier than Kate had expected. "And we ask that you listen to everything before you react." Robert's brow furrowed. "This sounds serious." "It is," Kate confirmed. "Jack and we've developed feelings for each other." Her mother's eyes widened. "What do you mean, feelings?" "We're in love," Jack said simply. "We didn't plan it or expect it. It just happened." A heavy silence filled the room. Kate watched as confusion, shock, and then concern passed over her mother's face. Robert sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. "How long has this been going on?" her mother finally asked. "A few weeks," Kate answered honestly. "We wanted to be sure of our feelings before we said anything." Robert began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. "I know it's unexpected," Jack said, "and probably not what you wanted to hear. But our feelings are real, and we wanted to be honest with you. Kate's mother stood up suddenly, pacing the room. I don't understand. Your step-siblings, you live in the same house. How could you let this happen? We didn't let anything happen, Kate replied, trying to keep her voice calm. We fell in love. And yes, the timing and circumstances are complicated, but our feelings aren't wrong. What do you expect us to do with this information? Robert asked, his voice tight. Jack squeezed Kate's hand. We're not asking for your blessing. Not yet. We just wanted you to know the truth. We're tired of sneaking around and hiding. Sneaking around? Her mother repeated, her voice rising. So this has been going on under our roof, behind our backs. Kate felt tears threatening but forced them back. Mom, please try to understand. We didn't want to hurt you or make things awkward, but we can't deny how we feel anymore. Her mother sat back down heavily beside Robert. I need time to process this. It's a lot. We understand, Jack said. We know it's not what you expected. Robert finally spoke up, his voice surprisingly calm. I have one question. Is this just physical attraction, or is it something more? Jack looked directly at his father. It's everything, Dad. I love her. All of her. Kate felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. I feel the same way about Jack. This isn't something temporary or superficial. Their parents exchanged a long look, having one of those silent conversations that only couples who truly know each other can have. I can't say I'm happy about this, her mother finally said. But you're both adults. We can't tell you who to love. We need time, Robert added. This is a big adjustment for us. Kate felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it wasn't rejection either. Thank you, she said softly. That's all we're asking for. Time and understanding. The conversation continued, sometimes tense, sometimes emotional. Their parents had questions, concerns, fears about what this meant for their blended family. Kate and Jack answered as honestly as they could, never letting go of each other's hands. By the time they finished talking, the afternoon had faded into evening. Nothing was resolved completely, but the truth was out. No more secrets. No more hiding. That night, Kate stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the stars. Jack came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You okay? He asked, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Better than okay, she replied, leaning back against him. I'm relieved. Whatever happens next, at least we don't have to pretend anymore. Jack turned her in his arms so she was facing him. I meant what I said. I love you, Kate. We'll figure out the rest together. As his lips met hers, Kate knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. Their parents would need time to adjust. They would need to navigate their new reality carefully. But standing there in Jack's arms, she felt certain of one thing: some loves were worth the complications.